Hey, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Welcome into the building. It's Trending Topics, and this entire show is dedicated to Diddy. Listen, I feel like we're seeing a higher level Bill Cosby situation with Diddy. Okay? And listen, come on, we're gonna be grown tonight. This grown folk talk tonight. So I don't want y'all coming like, oh, Diva, you want him to get away? Oh, no. Whatever crimes Diddy did, he needs to pay for said crimes. But I'm finding it interesting that people saw all kinds of violence, knew that he was evil, and still went to bed, woke up the next day, and came back to work for him. I'm just confused on where they do that at. The latest lawsuit, Don Richard, part of Danity Kane and his other group, Dirty Money. And she said with her own eyes, with her own eyes, she said, we're going to go through the 55-page lawsuit. She said with her own eyes, she saw him, well, let me say this. She saw Kim Porter look like something happened to her by the hands of Diddy. Then she said, with her own eyes, she saw something happen to Cassie. Now, you know how we do over here. We break it down by the words that came out the people's mouth. Not Diva putting 20 on 10. This is the words coming out of her mouth. Out of her mouth, she said she saw what happened to Cassie, and she went and told Cassie she should leave. She told Cassie, save yourself. You deserve better. Leave. Then she said when Diddy found out that she told Cassie to leave him, he told her to mind your business. Don't be telling my B Cassie what to do. He said, and I'm paraphrasing y'all know how I get down. Do you want to live? Now she's saying Diddy told her all of that. Now listen, y'all, I didn't go to Harvard. I did not go to Yale, and I was never at the top of my class, but I could put 2 and 2 together. I just gave y'all her words. So you had the wherewithal when you saw Kim Porter was hurt. You told yourself he a dangerous man. When you saw Cassie get hurt, you told Cassie, save yourself. But nowhere in there, did you say, let me save myself? We got to talk about it. Because this is what she said. This ain't what the Diva said. So now, decades later, she got a civil suit. She won a jury trial. And she wants some money. Let me ask you this. Is at any point people responsible for themselves ever? Are we ever? Or do we always get to say it is somebody else's fault? I don't see how someone can say they done warned and told everybody else to say themselves, but they didn't say themselves. Yeah, he's a monster. But if I walk into the room and the boogeyman's there, I'm going to tell everybody, hey, that's the boogeyman. Y'all should leave, but I'm going to be leaving too. I'm not going to tell you he's the boogeyman and then I go sit next to him and have lunch with him. We're going to talk about it. Come on, Sasuke. It's only 2024, right? And 2024 ain't over. She said, yet in March 2020, she was hired by Diddy to judge a new making the band. You had all this intel that this man was the devil. And then you still go and be around the devil. And now you want us, the taxpayers, you want to jury up your peers so we could go sit down and what? Give you what? Now, I'm sorry for whatever happened to you. But you can't tell us on one note, you're going to save this one, but you couldn't save yourself. She's claiming SA, like all of them are. Mental abuse, this, that, and the other. We're going to talk about it. Some people literally sell their soul to the devil for a dime. And that is why on a regular basis over here, I tell y'all ain't nothing wrong with a studio apartment. Because guess what? Probably if you're in a studio, you ain't got to sell your booty, your soul, nothing. You could probably go work at Walmart or Target and still pay for your studio apartment. And have you some groceries in the refrigerator and have your peace of mind. It ain't nothing wrong because you're going to have your little refrigerator, a stove, and all that. And a place to lay your head. And everybody's saying Diddy's a monster. But can I tell you this? Everybody in the industry knew he was a monster way before we did. And they was at the white parties. They was drinking the Ciroc with him. They wanted to, listen, the Love album has a whole lot of artists that collaborated for that Love album. Look up the Love album. How many artists collaborated on that Love album? And they knew when they was in the studio, Can't Stop, Won't Stop, that Diddy was a monster. So now they want to throw the bucket on us. They want us to be responsible for locking him up when 2.2 seconds ago, they was all in his face, eating chicken with him, dancing with him. Listen, if you see the video, because didn't Stevie J show it? You see the video from his 50th white party? Everybody, the who's who of Hollywood in the entertainment industry, they was there. But yet you put a mic in somebody's face now. Oh, I see him put his hands on Kim Porter. Oh, I see him put his hands on Cassie. Oh, I told Cassie she should leave. Oh, I saved Cassie a couple of times. I worked for Diddy for 15 years. I worked for Diddy for 25 years. You could work with somebody for a day and see what they're about. But if you're working for them for 15, 20 years, 10 years, you definitely know what's going down. You definitely know what's good. Yesterday, they was at his Star Island mansion, drinking the Ciroc with him. And today, they acting like we didn't know. Oh, my God, he did that. Y'all knew. Y'all knew because y'all was partying with him. And this man had an issue with the hands. And Diddy been like what he liked. And everybody in the industry knows it. So we're going to get into it tonight. This is about the 8th or the 9th lawsuit against him. It's 55 pages. We're going to break it down. We're going to talk about it. And we're going to address the words that came out of her mouth. Not Diva making this up. Not Diva want a monster to be set free. He already free, but you know what I'm trying to say. Not Diva wanted him to get away with what he's getting away. No. But we got to address the truth. You know, you got to address this so we can break the cycle and people can stop. A lot of people let entertainers get away with the most. If this was your regular everyday average boss, there is no way he would have got to this level. He wouldn't have. You wouldn't have let him touch you. You wouldn't have let him talk to you like that, all crazy. Especially this generation now, if you look at their resume, they'd be on a job for 60 days and go get another one. And you'd be like, well, what happened? I ain't like the way they was talking to me. You're like, what? There's not a whole lot of longevity with this generation now. They don't stay nowhere too long. And some of the stuff that happened to them on these jobs, you'd be like, that ain't nothing. What, you quit over that? No, they quit. But if an entertainer get in their face, if it's an NFL player, a NBA player, somebody that got money, they let the most happen. Why? Because we coveting money and things. Buy you a Louis, a Gucci, you driving around in a Range Rover, and you done sold your soul literally to the devil. And nothing is wrong with all of those things. It's not. Nothing is wrong with it. But something is wrong when you going to sell your soul to the devil just to have it. I don't care how much money you have, don't have, and who knows your name or don't know your name. I'm not going to fool with you if you a crazy fool. The minute Diddy would have came at my neck, I would have been like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We ain't doing all this here. And a lot of times you got to let these men know you got uncles, cousins, brothers, and all of that. Come on now, to give us the info here. In interviews, Dawn has always said that she was disappointed that Diddy ended the group Dirty Money. So which is it, Dawn? DeRay Jones, talk to us, talk to the people. And you know what? Diddy's lawyers, if they good, and he got 3 law firms, they're going to pull up all this stuff. What are you doing, girlfriend? Am I the devil? Are you mad now? You want to backtrack and you just want to jump on the money train. What we doing? And she had the nerve to encourage others to work with him. She got a long road, but we're going to get into this lawsuit, guys. And I got a great panel here. They're going to help reread and get through this 55 pages. And hang in there, people, because you know how we do over here. We break it down piece by piece by piece by piece. We told you over here with Little Ronnie, when he first filed his lawsuit, I told you it was 99 million holes in it. And then what ended up happening? Little Ronnie had to file another one. He had to clean that thing up. What happened so far? Little Ronnie is still fighting. Why? Because he should have focused on the facts and not the sensational part of it. I worked for Diddy on the Love album. He didn't pay me. I want my money. But he thought by throwing everything in the kitchen sink in there, it was going to propel his lawsuit just like that. And now he's still waiting on this lawsuit to be seen before a judge. So we're going to look into this Danity Kane, Dawn, what's his name? Dawn Richard one. We're going to break it down. I'm going to give you my opinion. So buckle your seatbelts, everybody. I need a what, y'all? I need a choo-choo. Hold aboard, everybody. It is Wednesday night trending topics, and the topic is Diddy, okay? So he's being sued again by Dawn Richards from Danity Kane and Dirty Money. And we're going to read this thing page by page, and we're going to talk about it. Let me go ahead and bring the people on in the building. Hey, Felicia. Hey, Julius. Hey, E. Hey, Katrina. Hey, everybody. So let me go ahead and share screen, and we're going to get right into this. Yeah. Let's see here. All right. All right, so everybody good? Y'all seeing my screen? Let's talk about this, okay? So first of all, Dawn Angelique Richard, plaintiff, is so many people. She got Sean Combs up there, Harvey Pierre, Remote Productions Inc., New Remote Productions Inc., the Norlander Group LLC, November 15 LLC, Daddy's House Recording Studio, Bad Boy Entertainment, Bad Boy Records, Bad Boy Entertainment Holdings, Bad Boy Production Holdings, Bad Boy Book Holdings, the Sean Combs Music Inc., Sean Combs Capital LLC, Combs Enterprise, Universal Music Group, Interscope, Griffin, A&M Records, Diego America Supply Inc., that's the alcohol company, Ciroc Distilling Company, DBA Ciroc Canning Company, Combs Wines and Spirits LLC. Now, here's where I almost passed out. Now, he might have just named this after his mama, but I mean, she got enough people on there. Can we take Janice Combs Publishing Inc. off of here? Janice Combs Publishing Holdings, Sony Songs, a division of Sony Music Publishing LLC, Love Records. Now, Baby Love is, Baby Love is getting the messy end of this deal. She coming in, she was born into a world where her father was already, everything was a scandal. So Baby Love, I don't even know she going to get to grow up in all these Richards because they about to snatch every dime Diddy got. Okay, Epic Records, Doe Corporations 1 through 10, and Doe Defendants 11 through 20. We got to talk about this, okay? Now, I'm mad at the whole Janice Combs thing, not Mama Combs, because, if you remember earlier this year, Mama Combs was in the hospital. She couldn't take it. And she straight up told the doctors, you ain't got to do no MRI, no CAT scan, no this, no that, all this blood work. I know what my problem is. I'm stressed out. They coming for my baby boy Diddy, and I don't know what to do. So plaintiff Dawn Angelique Richard, Miss Richard, buying through her attorneys, the Bloom firm, and IP Legal Studio LLC, brings this action against defendants. Ms. Richards alleges upon knowledge concerning her own experience and upon information and belief as to all other matters. So, preliminary statement. Dawn Angelique Richards, known professionally as Dawn Richard, is an American musician, singer, songwriter, and performer. She gained widespread recognition as a member of the girl group Danity Kane, formed by defendant Sean Combs, Mr. Combs, and later transitioned into a key member of Mr. Combs' band Diddy Dirty Money. Defendant Sean Combs, a once celebrated hip-hop mogul, popularly known by his stage names Puff Daddy, Puffy, P. Diddy, Diddy, or Love, skyrocketed to fame in the late 1990s and became a powerful and enduring figure in the music entertainment industry. In 1998, Mr. Combs explained the origins of his stage name in USA Today interview. His nickname was Puff because he had a temper and was known to huff and puff when he was angry. I ain't going to get all biblical on y'all and go there, but they said it's something in the name. They said, watch what you name your kids. Watch what you call yourself. That's the whole thing of affirmations in the mirror. So now his own name, his own interview, they're going to use it against him in the courts. Because say, yeah, you do have a temper. You do get crazy and put your hands on people. You see how stuff come back to bite you in the booty? Over the decades following his rise to fame, Mr. Combs' star-studded, larger-than-life persona overshadowed his vicious temper and pervasive acts of violence directed towards those in his inner circle, specifically women. Mr. Combs' namesake temper frequently manifested in physical violence. Mr. Combs regularly hurled objects in fits of rage, often throwing items such as mobile phones, laptops, food, and studio equipment across the room at people. On numerous occasions, Ms. Richard witnessed Mr. Combs brutally beat his girlfriend, Miss Cassandra Cassie Ventura. Miss Ventura his persistent abuse included choking and strangling Miss Ventura, striking her with his hands and with objects, slapping her, punching her, and throwing items at her including a scolding hot pan. On many occasions, Miss Richard tried to intervene, offering Miss Victoria support and encouragement to leave Mr. Combs. Each time Mr. Combs learns of her efforts to help Miss Victoria and became enraged, threatening Miss Richard's life with statements such as, "You want to die today? I'll make an end go missing, and I end people." So I want you to digest that right there. She witnessed all of this. She's trying to help Cassie, and she ain't even trying to save herself. She stayed in it. She stayed in it. Compounding Mr. Combs' violent acts and death threats, he frequently exploited Miss Richards' musical talent as a singer and writer while withholding her rightful earnings, stealing her copyrighted works, and subjecting her to years of inhumane working conditions, which included groping, assault, and false imprisonment, among other violations. For nearly a decade, Mr. Combs manipulated Miss Richard with mantras that submission to his depraved demands was necessary for career advancement, instilling in her the belief that such abuse and exploitation were required for female artists to succeed in the music industry. It was not until Miss Victoria's bravery and coming forward that Miss Richard realized her own personal suffering was tied to many years of abuse by Mr. Combs that had become normalized for her. As more women courageously come forward, plaintiff has been empowered by the collective strength and now adds her voice to the growing chorus of victims, bravely sharing their harrowing stories. Together they seek justice and stand in solidarity as the latest of victims of the Me Too movement in the music industry. Ms. Dawn Angelique Richards is a resident of the state of California and was employed by defendants Remote Productions, Inc., New Remote Productions, Inc., Bad Boy Entertainment, LLC, Bad Boy Records, LLC, Bad Boy Entertainment Holdings, LLC, Bad Boy Productions Holding, Inc., Bad Boy Books Holding, Inc., Deshaun Carr Music, Inc., Sean Combs Capital, LLC, and Combs Enterprises, LLC, hereinafter collectively Bad Boy Records. From 2005 until 2012, at all relevant times herein, Ms. Richard met the definition of an employee of defended Bad Boy Records and related entities. At all relevant times herein, Ms. Richard was a resident of the state of New York. So they're making a point that she's an employee. And that's because they're going to hit them with all the rules and laws that of how you treat an employee. Okay, so that's why they're making that known right there. Defendant Sean Combs, upon information and belief, resides within the state of California. At all relevant times herein, Mr. Combs met the definition of employer. Ms. Richard under all relevant statutes. Defendant Harvey Pierre, Mr. Pierre, this is about maybe the second or third lawsuit that Harvey Pierre is named with Sean Combs. Upon information and belief, resides within the state of New Jersey. At all times relevant herein, defendant Harvey Pierre was the president of Bad Boy Entertainment and Bad Boy Records in New York and met the definition of an employer of Ms. Richard under all relevant statutes. So defendants Remote Productions, Inc., RPI, and New Remote Productions, Inc., and RPI are Delaware corporations and television production companies, which upon information and belief were created by Mr. Combs to produce Making the Band in New York and in California. At all relevant times herein, RPI and NRPI employed Ms. Richard under all relevant statutes. Defendant Dornor Linger Group LLC is a finance firm with its principal place of business in New York, and on information and belief was employed by other named defendants herein to pay an account to Miss Richard pursuant to her employment with other named defendants. On information and belief, the Norlander Group LLC formed November 15 LLC for purposes of distributing funds related to Making the Band. Upon information and belief, defendant Daddy's House Recording Studio, Inc. is a New York corporation and music recording studio owned by defendant Bad Boy Records in New York. At all relevant times herein, Mitch Richard was an employee required to work at said studio. Defendant Bad Boy Entertainment LLC is a music media and entertainment company founded by defendant Sean Combs, which includes the record label Defendant Bad Boy Records LLC. Defendant Bad Boy Entertainment LLC is a Delaware limited liability company and successor in interest to RPI. At all relevant times herein, Bad Boy Entertainment LLC met the definition of an employer of Miss Richard under all relevant statutes. Defendant Bad Boy Entertainment Inc. is a Florida corporation. At all relevant times herein, Bad Boy Entertainment Inc. met the definition of an employer of Miss Richard under all relevant statutes. Defendant Bad Boy Entertainment Holdings is a New York corporation upon and belief of Defendant Bad Boy Entertainment Holdings is a successor in interest to Defendants Bad Boy Entertainment LLC, Bad Boy Records LLC, and Bad Boy Entertainment as alleged herein. Defendant Bad Boy Productions Holding is a New York corporation upon information and belief. Defendant Bad Boy Holdings is a successor in interest to other Bad Boy defendants alleged herein. So she's explaining why she listed all of these people and how they are relevant to her lawsuit. Defendant Bad Boy Books Holdings, Inc. is a New York corporation. Upon information and belief, Defendant Bad Boy Books Holdings is a successor in interest to other Bad Boy defendants as alleged herein. Defendant Deshaun Combs Music Group is a company which Miss Richard was employed by defendant Sean Combs. Upon information and belief, the Sean Combs Music Inc. is part or successor to other Bad Boy company defendants as alleged herein. 21. Defendant Sean Combs Capital LLC and Combs Enterprises LLC are New York limited liability companies, which upon information and belief are successor in interest companies to defendant Deshaun Combs Music Inc. Defendant Universal Music Group, NV, is a Dutch-American multinational music corporation. UMG's corporate headquarters are located in Hilversum, Netherlands, and its operational headquarters are located in Santa Monica, California. Defendant Interscope Griffin A&M Records are subsidiaries of UMG with operational headquarters in California. At all relevant times herein, UMG and subsidiaries Interscope Griffin A&M Records financially benefited from, condoned, and enabled defendant Combs' misconduct as defined under all relevant statutes. Defendant Diego America Supply Inc. was a New York corporation and upon information and belief currently is in Kentucky and in our Illinois corporation doing business as, and I'll read this last sentence and the next person could chime in, Ciroc Distilling Company in New York. Mr. Richard conferred a benefit on these defendants pursuant to the direction of defendant Combs. Okay, Felicia?
Okay, and good evening, everybody. All right, Defendant Combs Wine and Spirits, LLC, is a New York limited liability company, which upon information and belief is Defendant Combs Holding Company for sponsorships by Defendant Diego American Supply Inc., Ciroc Distilling Company. At all relevant times, Ms. Richard was employed by Defendant Combs Wine and Spirits, LLC, under all relevant statutes. Defendant Janice Combs Publishing, Inc. is a music publishing administrator and a New York corporation who at all relevant times held or holds the publishing copyrights of Ms. Richard pursuant to her employment with other defendants herein under all relevant statutes. Defendant Janice Combs Publishing Holdings, Inc. is a music publishing administrator, a New York corporation, and a successor in interest to Janice Combs Publishing, Inc., who, at all relevant times, held or holds the publishing copyrights of Miss Richard pursuant to her employment with other defendants herein under all relevant statutes. Defendant Sony Songs, a division of Sony Music Publishing, is a New York limited liability company who is the assignee of Miss Richards' publishing copyrights from defendants Janice Combs Publishing Inc. and Janice Combs Publishing Holdings Inc. Defendant Love Records Inc. is a music record label owned and or upon information and belief controlled by defendant Sean Combs with its principal place of business in California. Ms. Richard conferred a benefit on this defendant pursuant to the direction of defendant Combs. Defendant Epic Records, a record label currently managing other defendants' companies, Interest and Music, is a subsidiary of Sony Music Entertainment with its principal place of business in New York. Ms. Richard conferred a benefit on these defendants pursuant to direction of defendant Combs. Jurisdiction and venue. Venue is proper in this court pursuant to 28 U.S.C. 1391 because a substantial part of the events or missions giving rise to this action occurred in this district, and defendant Sean Combs and Bad Boy Records conduct substantial business and or are domiciled in this district. Factual allegations. Ms. Richard is selected to be in Mr. Combs' all-female musical group, Danity Kane, after competing on MTV's Making the Band. In or around 2004, Ms. Richard was selected to participate in Season 3 of MTV Network's reality television show, Making the Band. The show centered around the formation and development of a new musical group under the mentorship of Mr. Combs. The contestants would compete and be chosen by Mr. Combs to form a band, which would go on to create albums and perform. For aspiring artists like Ms. Richards, Making the Band represented a concrete path to a career in the entertainment industry. Ms. Richard appeared in Season 3 and 4 of Making the Band, which first aired in 2005, and in Season 5 of Making His Band, which aired in 2009. Out of thousands of contestants, Ms. Richard, along with approximately 12 other women, were selected to participate in Season 3 of Making the Band. 5 women, including Ms. Richard, were ultimately chosen to be in the group Danity Kane, which was named by Ms. Richard. Yeah, that's important piece. That's a copyright piece, I gather. Prior to and including the first Danity Kane album, Making the Band was filmed entirely in Daddy's House Recording Studio at 3120 West 44th Street, New York, New York. The Making the Band content that focused on Danity Kane's work on its second album, Welcome to the Dollhouse, was filmed at Daddy's house and at Mr. Combs' Miami residence. Other Making the Band episodes included Los Angeles as a third filming location. Upon information and belief to create Making the Band, camera crews filmed 24 hours a day, gathering months' worth of footage to condense into mere hours of entertainment for viewers. Danity Kane released its self-titled debut album in August 2006 and its second album, Welcome to the Dollhouse, in March 2008. Danity Kane's first album sold over 4 million copies. Damages to Miss Richard for unpaid salary. Here we go. The people ain't getting paid. They don't get paid. Here we go. Damages to Miss Richard for unpaid salaries are estimated at $1 million. Danity Kane's second album, Welcome to the Dollhouse, sold over 2 million copies. Damages to Miss Richard for unpaid salaries and royalties are estimated at $500,000. Damages on unpaid wages for touring on over 100 dates for Miss Richard with Danity Kane are estimated at $1.8 million.
Hold on one second, Felicia. I mean, why do all these people work for Diddy and they work for months and don't get a dime? And they stay. But go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I mean, little Ronnie did it. She did it. What? Go ahead.
The chef did it. The nanny did it. Housekeeper did it. Oh, come on. They work for free. Okay, this is what they do. Mm-hmm. Mr. Combs fired bandmate Aubrey O'Day and Juanita D. Woods Woggett from Danity Kane on live television at the height of its fame in 2008, which resulted in Danity Kane being disbanded in 2009. Miss Richard.
I remember that.
Miss Richard first encounters Mr. Combs' aggressive, intimidating behavior and animus toward women. During the auditions and on the set of Making the Band, Mr. Combs projected an aura of superiority, wealth, and power. Mr. Combs regularly wore sunglasses and avoided looking at the female contestants in the eyes, contributing to an atmosphere of uncertainty and intimidation. During auditions, Mr. Combs spoke to the female contestants in a hostile, condescending manner, making disparaging gender-based remarks such as calling them, quote, fat, quote, ugly, quote, itches, quote, O's. Miss Richard felt threatened and intimidated by Mr. Combs' blatant disdain for the young women, like herself, who were excited for the opportunity to be on his show. Once the band was made, Mr. Combs' contempt for women was readily apparent as he continued to display aggressive and hostile behavior towards Miss Richard and her all-female Danity Kane bandmates. Mr. Combs regularly referred to the 5 women as itches and O's and denigrated their physical appearances. By way of example, Mr. Combs stated that Miss Richard was too skinny and needed to, quote, do something about her face, close quote.
Oh my gosh, not the face.
Yeah, the face. On one occasion, in around 2005, during the first season of Making the Band 3, Miss Richard observed Mr. Combs' ex-partner and the mother of his 3 children, Kim Porter, leaving Mr. Combs' recording studio in tears with visible facial injuries, including a lacerated lip. Realizing that Mr. Combs was capable of committing acts of violence against women, caused Miss Richard to feel deep apprehension and fear that Mr. Combs could one day physically harm her. Miss Richard was present when Mr. Combs was introduced to Cassandra Ventura for the first time in or around 2006. The moment Mr. Combs first saw Miss Ventura, his demeanor noticeably shifted. Mr. Combs positioned himself directly in front of Miss Ventura's seat, invading her personal space, and fixated on her with an intense, unyielding stare, isolating her from the other people in the room, including Miss Ventura's then boyfriend, music producer Ryan Leslie. Coincidentally, this first meeting between Mr. Combs and Miss Ventura was the first time that Miss Richard was in Mr. Combs' presence without a camera crew filming. Observing Mr. Combs behave in such an intimidating, predatory manner the first time that they were off camera made Miss Richard feel deeply apprehensive and afraid of him. Subsequently, Miss Ventura ended her relationship with Mr. Leslie and began dating Mr. Combs, who would become violent and abusive towards her. Danity Kane, sexual harassment, inhumane treatment, and denial of basic needs by Mr. Combs. For the majority of Miss Richards' tenure as a member of Danity Kane and Diddy Dirty Money, Mr. Combs required her to remain at his various residences and studios in New York, Los Angeles, Florida, and New Jersey for activities such as recording, rehearsing, dressing, preparing costumes, and exercising. Throughout the production of Making the Band 3 and 4, Mr. Combs deprived Miss Richard and her Danity Kane bandmates of basic needs, such as adequate food and sleep. When Miss Richard or her Danity Kane bandmates requested meals or rest, Mr. Combs refused and chastised them with derogatory comments like, quote, "You itches don't want this," close quote, or, quote, "Y'all are not hungry enough," close quote, and, quote, "I'm paying you itches to work," close quote. This demeaning behavior gradually undermined Miss Richardson's confidence and contributed significantly to her growing feelings of insecurity and fear of reprisal from Mr. Combs. Upon information and belief, Mr. Combs would regularly be awake for prolonged periods of time because he was high on drugs. During these periods, Mr. Combs demanded continuous access to Miss Richard and her Danity Kane bandmates, often forcing them to record and rehearse for stretches of 36 to 48 hours without breaks, forced to choose between eating and sleeping. Miss Richard lost a significant amount of weight, weighing approximately 100 pounds at a height of 5'4". Miss Richard began to normalize these extreme conditions and perceived them as standard requirements of her participation in Danity Kane.
Mm.
I'm done here.
All right, who's next? Julius?
Mr. Combs regularly sent his associates to wake Miss Richard and her Danity Kane bandmates in the overnight hours so he could watch them rehearse. The regularity of these disturbances led Miss Richard to adapt by sleeping in a sitting position, fully dressed, oh my god, and with makeup on, heightening her anxiety. Over time, this abnormal sleeping arrangement came to feel routine, further normalizing Mr. Combs' invasive demands. In addition to exhausting rehearsals, Mr. Combs required Miss Richard and her bandmates to participate in 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 intense workouts with a personal trainer. On one occasion, while running on the beach, Miss Richard became so dehydrated that she vomited. Instead of offering medical assistance, MTV Network's camera crew filmed the incident, contributing to her acceptance of such treatment as part of her professional life. This is why MTV needs to be added to the lawsuit as well. The unrelenting and rigorous schedule of rehearsals, performance, and near constant filming that Mr. Combs imposed caused Miss Richard to experience extreme weight loss, dehydration, fatigue, and painful rashes from the microphone pack she was required to wear on her back. These conditions intensified Miss Richards' feelings of powerlessness as she increasingly viewed them as part of her professional reality and feared the consequences of any resistance. And,
In the further assertion of
oh,
power,
I got
you got it in dominance, 53.
in a further assertion of power and dominance, Mr. Combs insisted on holding meetings while dressed only in his underwear. Gross pig. On one occasion in 2008, at his Miami residence, Mr. Combs emailed Miss Richard, directing her to meet him in the living room. When she arrived, he was wearing only his underwear. Miss Richard asked Mr. Combs to put clothes on, but he refused, stating, "This is my effing house." Mr. Combs then conducted a meeting lasting approximately an hour while dressed in his underwear, causing Miss Richard to feel violated and embarrassed and amplifying her feelings of powerlessness. Following Following the official Danity Kane breakup in early 2009, effectuated by Miss effectuated by Mr. Combs, Miss Richard experienced significant financial hardship with no prospective opportunities for employment within the entertainment field. Miss Richard spent several months traveling from Baltimore to Daddy's house recording studio in New York without pay or allocated budget. Mr. Combs promised that Miss Richards' compensations would result in payment of license fees and royalties pursuant to her contract with Bad Boy Records. However, no such compensation was ever reported or paid to Miss Richards. Damages related to these continuing copyright infringements will be proved at trial. Diddy Dirty Money, Miss Richard experiences Mr. Combs' gender based physical violence, criminal acts, SAs, SA, threats, and intimidation. Approximately by the fall of 2009, many of Miss Richards' compositions had been recorded by other Bad Boy record artists. Due to the success of her compositions, Miss Richard was invited to meet musical artists Camille Miss Harper, and shortly thereafter, Mr. Combs, Miss Richard, and Miss Harper formed a new group, Diddy Dirty Money. Internal recording for Diddy Dirty Money album's Last Train to Paris took place in Mr. Combs' home on Danity Drive in Los Angeles, California. On the first day of recording, Miss Richard and Miss Harper arrived at Mr. Combs' home and waited in the kitchen, where Mr. Combs' girlfriend, Miss Ventura, was frying eggs for him. Miss Richard Miss Richard observed Mr. Combs come down the stairs looking high on drugs and entered the kitchen, approached Miss Ventura, and screamed, "I've been asking you for my shh. I can't stand you. You never do it right." Mr. Combs pushes Miss Ventura against the wall and choked her, then picked up the scathing hot pan of eggs and threw it at her, causing her to fall to the ground in a fetal position. Cursing and screaming, Mr. Combs dragged Miss Ventura up the stairs.
Hold on one second, Julius. Let me just jump in for a little bit. So
Okay.
we're on 58, guys. Frozen in shock and terror. Miss Richard heard glass shattering, crashing, and banging noises as Mr. Combs dragged Miss Ventura up the stairs. Miss Richard wanted to intervene and help Miss Ventura, but Miss Harper adamantly refused to interfere in Mr. Combs' relationship and physically led Miss Richard out of the residence. Terrified and shaken, Miss Richard returned to a hotel where she was unable to sleep due to worrying about Miss Ventura and her own safety. 59, the following day, Miss Richard received a call demanding that she return to Mr. Combs' residence to continue recording. Mr. Combs brought Miss Richard and Miss Harper into the recording room at his studio, locked the door, dimmed the lights, and gave each of them flowers. Mr. Combs went on at length, stating, "This is normal. This was just a lover's argument where no one was hurt. This is what love is. I'm giving you an opportunity. If you want to make it, shut your mouth. If you say anything, there will be consequences." Mr. Combs further warned that people end up missing, being threatened while locked for over 20 minutes in a small enclosed space with Mr. Combs. After observing Mr. Combs violently assault Miss Ventura the day before, Miss Richard was terrified and genuinely believed that Mr. Combs would follow through on his threats. Number 60, in or around November 2009, after the Soul Train Awards in Atlanta, Georgia, Mr. Combs flew Miss Richard and Miss Harper to his house in New York on his private jet for an after party. There were many well-known celebrities at the after party, and copious amount of illegal drugs were being openly consumed. Upon information and belief, Mr. Combs had arranged for dozens of young women and girls, some of whom appeared to be underage, to be transported to the party. So do you see that all of them are making sure that they add something to do with this sex trafficking in their stories? My thing is, again, I'm going to say this. She saw all of this illegal stuff. She saw young girls apparently looking like they was underage, and she still stayed around after this to be transported to the party. The women arrived wearing little to no clothing and were given drugs and alcohol. Many of them appear lethargic or passed out while Mr. Combs and his guests. So she watched this. She watched this. Perform SA on them. Miss Richards believed that her presence at the party was a test to see whether Mr. Combs can trust her. My thing is she serious? E, you want to pick up from here?
Sure thing. 61. Mr. Combs repeatedly said things like, quote, "This is a buffet. Enjoy yourselves. This is what we do. This is how we party." End quote. Miss Richard felt shocked and horrified at the sight of Mr. Combs and his guests violating incapacitated young women and implored Mr. Combs' personal assistant, Capricorn Clark, to allow her to leave. Miss Clark insisted that Miss Richard wait 15 minutes for Miss Clark to, quote, "make it make sense." That is, to make Miss Richard exit less conspicuous so that Mr. Combs would not notice that she had left. Knowing that she was not free to leave and had to wait for Miss Clark to help her orchestrate her departure, Miss Richard experienced feelings of panic and being trapped against her will. 62. Mr. Combs regularly placed Miss Richard in similar situations with no means of escape. At Mr. Combs' drug-fueled parties, his guests, including Miss Richard, were required to surrender their phones upon entry. Mr. Combs kept the doors locked and guarded by security personnel, making it impossible for Miss Richard to leave without alerting Mr. Combs that she had done so. Mr. Combs hired police officers to attend his parties, sending a clear message to guests that his influence extended to law enforcement officers and creating a climate of fear and tacit warning that reporting him to authorities would be both unacceptable and futile. 63. On many occasions, Mr. Combs had parties at his Miami, Florida residence that lasted for several days. At one of the parties, Miss Richard witnessed Mr. Combs' opening, stating that he had arranged for busloads of young, quote, exotic, end quote, girls such as mixed, Black and Asian, Indonesian, and albino. Once again, Miss Richard observed inebriated young girls being SA'd by Mr. Combs and his guests. In a state of panic and terror, Miss Richard fled to the bedroom. Mr. Combs had insisted she stay in and barricaded the door shut with furniture. 64. Mr. Combs openly physically aid Miss Ventura in front of Miss Richard and other witnesses on multiple occasions. On one occasion, in or around the fall of 2009, Diddy Dirty Money was in New York preparing to perform at a festival. Inside their vehicle, Mr. Combs grabbed Miss Ventura's neck, pulled her out of the van onto the grass, and pinned her down, choking her while yelling, "You gonna get effed up today." This incident took place in the backstage area outside the festival and was entirely visible to passers-by. 65. In another instance, in or around early 2010, Mr. Combs punched Miss Ventura in the face in the bathroom of a party in Los Angeles. Frequently, when Miss Ventura attempted to voice an opinion or stand up to Mr. Combs, he would strike her or wrap his hands around her throat and choke her. 66. On the first several occasions that they observed Mr. Combs, Miss Ventura, Miss Richard, and Miss Harper spoke with Miss Ventura to support and encourage Miss Ventura in escaping her abusive relationship with Mr. Combs. Every time that Miss Richard and Miss Harper tried to intervene, Mr. Combs learned of the conversation and became irate. Mr. Combs screamed at the women, quote, "Y'all bees don't get in my relationship," end quote. Quote, "Don't tell my bee, Miss Ventura, what she needs to be doing. Just make my money and STF up. I end artists. I shelve careers. You could be missing. You bees want to DIE today," among other threats. Interscope Records enabled Mr. Combs' gender-motivated violence. 67. In or around late 2009 or early 2010, Bad Boy Entertainment entered an agreement with Interscope Geffen A&M Records. Upon information and belief, Bad Boy was paid $50 million in exchange for Bad Boy's future releases being distributed through Interscope. In so doing, Mr. Combs intended to capitalize on Interscope's significant resources and enhance the promotion and sales of Bad Boy's releases, including Diddy Dirty Money's upcoming album. 68. In the weeks and months leading up to the Bad Boy Interscope deal, Mr. Combs had frequent meetings with producer and then CEO of Interscope Records, Jimmy Iovine. On one such occasion, Combs hosted a dinner at a West Hollywood, California restaurant, which Miss Richard and Miss Harper were required to attend. Among the guests at the dinner were celebrities like Neo and Usher, as well as Mr. Iovine. At the dinner, Mr. Combs and Miss Ventura had an argument. In front of the dinner guests, Mr. Combs hissed at Miss Ventura in a screaming whisper and forcefully punched her in the stomach, causing her to double over in visible pain, crying. Miss Clark escorted Miss Ventura out of the restaurant, and Mr. Combs remained and continued socializing with the dinner guests. At this point, Interscope Records clearly had actual knowledge that Combs was dangerous around females and that Combs was willing to brazenly batter a female in public. 69. Even after Mr. Iovine watched Mr. Combs commit a violent assault against in front of numerous high-profile witnesses, the Bad Boy Interscope deal took place and remained in effect, providing Mr. Combs with immense financial rewards and enabling him to commit further acts of violence without fear of repercussions. Watching Mr. Combs openly aid Miss Ventura in front of Mr. Iovine and various celebrities, and observing that other powerful music industry representatives were complicit in Mr. Combs' behavior, amplified Miss Richard's fears that Mr. Combs could one day harm her and that his actions would be accepted and normalized by everyone surrounding him. 70. As part of the agreement between Bad Boy and Interscope, Interscope heavily promoted Diddy Dirty Money's Last Train to Paris album. Mr. Iovine had presented Mr. Combs with a demo of Coming Home for him to produce, a song that will become a multi-platinum hit. Mr. Iovine was encouraging Mr. Combs to develop a new sound for the album, into which Interscope was investing significant resources. Miss Richard, Miss Harper, and Miss Ventura all provided vocal performances for this project. Released in November 2010, the album Last Train to Paris became Diddy Dirty Money's most commercially successful project, providing vast financial rewards to both Interscope and Mr. Combs. Diddy Dirty Money, Mr. Combs subjects Miss Richard to labor, trafficking, and oppressive working conditions. In or around the fall of 2009, Diddy Dirty Money began recording the song Love Comes Down. Upon information and belief, Mr. Combs continued to use drugs that caused him to remain awake for prolonged periods of time. When he was awake, he would demand that Miss Richard and Miss Harper record in the studio, where they would spend 3 to 4 consecutive days recording without a break to eat or sleep. Mr. Combs required Miss Richard and Miss Harper to remain at his homes continuously, denying the opportunity to return to their hotel rooms for breaks. The degree of control Mr. Combs exercised over Miss Richard's daily life and basic needs exasperated the significant power imbalance and threatening atmosphere that ensured Miss Richard's compliance with his demands. 72. Mr. Combs regularly left the studio and required Miss Richard and Miss Harper to stay and write verses to songs. Occasionally, Miss Richard tried to leave to get something to eat or to go to the hotel. Whenever Miss Richard tried to leave, Mr. Combs would call and demand, "Where the F are you? And we have an album to make." Mr. Combs frequently made threats, especially if they asked for food or rest, stating, "You're a B. I don't want to see your effing face. I make ends go missing, and I make things go away." Each time, Miss Richard returned to the studio immediately, believing that Mr. Combs was capable of following through with his threats. 73. Mr. Combs criticized Miss Richard for being too skinny, yet denied her request for food and demanded that she drink only peanut butter shakes. Mr. Combs had full meals prepared by a chef and ate them in front of Miss Richard and Miss Harper, never offering them food. 74. Miss Richard and Miss Harper begged for food and rest breaks, but Mr. Combs refused, making statements such as, "Absolutely not. This is what it takes to be great." Mr. Combs' responses underscored the threat he posed and heightened Miss Richard's concerns for her safety and well-being. 75. As Miss Richard continued to work nonstop, transitioning between the studio, rehearsals, workouts, and back to the studio, she became severely dehydrated and experienced chronic stomach cramping from being undernourished and excessively thin. On the numerous occasions that she told Mr. Combs that she was not feeling well, he called her lazy and dismissed her health conditions, instilling in her further apprehension of communicating her needs. 76. In or around the summer of 2010, Miss Richard experienced abdominal pain, swollen glands, and a fever. She was hospitalized and diagnosed with arthralgia, joint pain due to overuse, sprains, tendinitis, and infection, anemia, and a low white blood cell count. Miss Richard presented Mr. Combs with her medical records, specifying that she needed to emphasize eating well, being adequately hydrated, and getting adequate rest. But Mr. Combs ordered her to report to the studio the next day for another multi-day recording session. Mr. Combs' blatant disregard for her health and well-being cemented Miss Richard's fear of his authority and control over her career and health. 77. Miss Richard continued to witness Mr. Combs' abuse towards Miss Ventura. Miss Ventura often wore sunglasses and makeup in an attempt to hide visible injuries. These incidents further solidified Miss Richard's fear of Mr. Combs as they were constant reminders of the physical dangers she potentially could and eventually would face. 78. Mr. Combs often exhibited uncontrollable anger during recording sessions, throwing objects like albums, laptops, and food against the wall or at individuals. Mr. Combs frequently flew into frenzied, unpredictable rages. Miss Richard feared making any misstep that could direct his anger toward her. However, her fears went beyond her immediate physical safety. Because she had witnessed Mr. Combs' violent nature, a side of Mr. Combs that the world had not yet seen, she feared that falling out of Mr. Combs's good grace, or worse, standing up to him, or speaking out against him, could result in serious harm to her. Miss Richard frequently thought about Mr. Combs' threat about making people go missing and feared taking any action that could label her as a target. Despite Mr. Combs' violence, threats, and misogyny, Diddy Dirty Money experienced significant sales of records, selling 2 million copies of one single, 500,000 of another in the US, and in Australia, 5 million single copies. Miss Richard's unpaid wages and royalties are estimated at $1,200,000. Miss Richard's unpaid touring wages are estimated at over $350,000 for touring dates within the United States alone. Ciroc, Diddy beats non-payment. 80. In or around the summer of 2009, Miss Richard and Miss Harper were required by Mr. Combs to perform as part of Diddy Dirty Money and attend numerous promotional events, including late or overnight parties, all of which were under contract between Mr. Combs and Ciroc Vodka, or between Mr. Combs and Diddy Beats, pursuant to the Bad Boy Interscope record deal. 81. Miss Richard was never compensated for the extra time she spent fulfilling Mr. Combs' promotional contracts, including the Ciroc and the Diddy Beats campaign. Mr. Combs was paid approximately $250,000 per Ciroc appearance. Mr. Combs did not compensate Miss Richard or Miss Harper for these appearances, other than just $5,000 each on a handful of occasions. Mr. Combs' ongoing explanation for withholding compensation was that their appearances were a requirement for their tour. Additionally, Miss Richard was required to appear and to promote Diddy Beats through parties, album songs, and videos. 82. Over time, Mr. Combs was paid $6.25 million for 25 Ciroc shows that Miss Richard was required to attend. Following each show, Miss Richard and Miss Harper approached Mr. Combs to inquire about their insufficient and sporadic payments. Mr. Combs routinely responded with statements such as, quote, "You bees aren't grateful," end quote, and, quote, "You don't want this," end quote. Miss Richard estimates losses from Ciroc campaign promotions totaling at least $1,562,500. Upon information and belief, Mr. Combs received an advance on Diddy Beats, for which Miss Richard received no compensation. Mr. Combs sexually harasses and aids Miss Richard. Between approximately 2009 and 2011, throughout Diddy Dirty Money's recording process, rehearsals, and performances, Mr. Combs repeatedly ordered Miss Richard to strip down to her underwear. He frequently referred to her as a B or a W and made demeaning remarks about her body, alternatingly calling her lazy, fat, ugly, and skinny, particularly in front of his friends, producers, and bodyguards. 84.
Hold on one second, E. And bodyguards. Now, remember the bodyguards that currently talking that work for him, they so innocent, they didn't see nothing, they didn't let nothing go down. She's saying all of this happened in front of his friends, producers, and bodyguards. Go ahead.
Mr. Combs frequently held meetings with Miss Richard wearing only his underwear, despite Miss Richard's protests and repeated requests for him to put on clothing. In response, Mr. Combs called her a B and W and reminded her that she should be grateful for the opportunity to be there. 85. Often while they were recording in the studio, Mr. Combs would hold parties where he would invite young men and women who were often scantily dressed and appeared underage, to use drugs and engage in sex acts. Miss Richard observed Mr. Combs and his colleagues kissing, groping, and inappropriately touching the young women. Upon information and belief, the participants often left the immediate area to have intercourse and returned shortly thereafter. 86 on numerous occasions between approximately 2009 and 2011, under the guise of preparing for performances, Mr. Combs would intrude into Miss Richard's changing room at Daddy's house unannounced while Miss Richard was undressed. 87. Even though a female stylist was present and assisting Miss Richard with her wardrobe, Mr. Combs would grope Miss Richard's body, including her bare buttocks and her chest area near her breasts, with no legitimate purpose and without Miss Richard's consent. Mr. Combs caressed her buttocks to show the stylist where he wanted her high-waisted panties positioned and attempted to touch her breasts, claiming to show the stylist where he wanted her bra straps to go. 88. When Mr. Combs would enter the changing room, Miss Richard would cover her chest with her hands to prevent Mr. Combs from seeing or touching her breasts. When Mr. Combs would touch her body, Miss Richard would attempt to swat his hands away and state, "Don't touch me." 89. Mr. Combs frequently smacked Miss Richard's bare buttocks and often commented on her body, noting that although she was too skinny, she had an ass. 90. Ignoring her visible and communicated discomfort, Mr. Combs persisted and continued to intrude when Miss Richard was in the dressing room, continued to touch her buttocks and breast area under the guise of showing the stylist what to do, and continued to smack her buttocks without her consent. 91. In or around October 2010, Diddy Dirty Money performed in Glasgow, Scotland, where Mr. Combs engaged in overt sexual advances towards Miss Richard. On numerous occasions when Miss Richard exited the dressing room fully styled, Mr. Combs looked at her approvingly and smacked her buttocks while making comments such as, "You're looking good." "Okay, Don, okay." And "I see what that is," in a flirtatious tone. Each time Miss Richard moved away and asked him not to touch her, but Mr. Combs disregarded her protests. 92. On their last night in Glasgow, Miss Richard witnessed Mr. Combs and several other males gangbanging Mr. Combs' female assistant at the hotel pool. Miss Richard immediately left and went to her hotel room. 93. On their flight back to the United States the next day, Miss Richard asked Mr. Combs where his assistant was. Mr. Combs replied, "I don't give a F where that B is." Miss Richard later learned that Mr. Combs had taken his assistant's passport with him to the United States, leaving the assistant stranded in the United Kingdom. In Glasgow, Miss Harper confided in Miss Richard that her husband and manager Tony Vick was abusive. After an especially severe assault, she confided in Miss Richard that she wanted to leave Mr. Vick, and Miss Richard helped her to plan her exit from the relationship. However, Miss Harper and Mr. Vick reconciled, and both Mr. Combs and Mr. Vick, who had a close relationship, learned of Miss Richard's role in helping Miss Harper. Both Mr. Combs and Mr. Vick became noticeably distrustful of Miss Richard, which exasperated her fears of harm and reprisal.
So hold on one second with this 94. This is where she's going to have problems at. She was constantly helping other people, but she couldn't help herself get away from this nonsense. Continue.
95. When Mr. Combs would require his Diddy Dirty Money bandmates to stay at his residence in Miami, Miss Richard would barricade herself inside her room at night, placing heavy furniture against the door because she feared being harmed in her sleep. 96. In or around late December 2010, Miss Richard, Miss Harper, and Miss Ventura were in Mr. Combs' Los Angeles home when Mr. Combs stated, "I want to give you fake boobs for Christmas." Mr. Combs reached out and cupped Miss Richard's breast without her permission and stated, "You're an A. I'm thinking a D." Miss Richard recoiled in shock and left the room. Throughout the above-mentioned time period when Miss Richard resisted Mr. Combs' advances, Mr. Combs retaliated by denying her singing parts in songs, removing her from songs, refusing to allow her to sing in performances, and turning her microphone off during performances. The more Miss Richard rebuffed his advances, the more Mr. Combs' retaliatory behavior increased. Mr. Combs assaults and falsely imprisons Miss Richard. 98. In or around December 2010, Diddy Dirty Money was preparing for an upcoming performance on Saturday Night Live. As usual, rehearsals lasted for days without the opportunity to eat or rest, and the rehearsal schedule was unpredictable. After waiting all day for Mr. Combs to call or send a car, Miss Richard received a phone call from Mr. Combs demanding, "Where the F are you bees? You bees don't want this. Y'all don't deserve to have someone pick you up. Get a cab." Miss Richard and Miss Harper immediately took a taxi to Sir Studios at 520 West 25th Street, New York, New York, anxious because Mr. Combs sounded enraged. 99. Upon their arrival at Sir Studios, Mr. Combs and Harvey Pierre were waiting for them in the lobby. Mr. Combs screamed obscenities at them. "Where the F were you bees? You bees don't want to win. You don't want this. I'm so tired of y'all." Miss Richard noticed that people in the lobby were reacting to Mr. Combs' tirade. Embarrassed, Miss Richard asked Mr. Combs to stop swearing and calling them bees in front of everyone. 100. Mr. Combs' facial expression shifted as he stepped towards Miss Richard, raised his arm, and swung his fist toward her face. Believing that Mr. Combs was going to hit her, Miss Richard braced for the impact. Before Mr. Combs could strike her, Mr. Combs' bodyguard grabbed her, escorted her out of the studio, and forced her into the Bad Boy Records Bentley that was parked outside. Miss Harper ran after Miss Richard, and Mr. Combs' bodyguard closed and locked the Bentley doors with both women inside. 101. Inside the vehicle, Miss Richard realized there were no interior door handles and that they were locked inside with no way to escape. Miss Richard's belongings were in the studio, but she was able to call her father from Miss Harper's cell phone. Miss Richard relayed to her father what had happened and that she needed help and feared that she would go missing. Moments later, Mr. Combs' bodyguard removed only Miss Harper from the Bentley, leaving Miss Richard locked in the car alone for over 2 hours. 102. Miss Richard screamed as loudly as she could, but no one responded. It was a late evening in the wintertime. The windows were heavily tinted, and the interior of the car was dark except for faint interior lights. Miss Richard's belongings and winter coat were in the studio while the ignition was off and there was no heat. With Mr. Combs' prior threats and violence running through her mind, Miss Richard felt sheer panic, terror, and feelings of claustrophobia at being locked in a small, dark, enclosed space with no way to communicate or call for help. She began to feel cold and fear for her life, not knowing when or if she would be released. 103. Miss Richard's father drove to New York from Baltimore and arrived at the studio approximately 2 hours later. Only after her father arrived and demanded to see her did Mr. Pierre order Mr. Combs' bodyguard to release Miss Richard from the vehicle. Mr. Pierre ushered Miss Richard's father between several rooms at Sir Studios, where he waited for approximately 2 hours before being able to confront Mr. Combs. Once Miss Richard's father expressed that he intended to contact police, Mr. Combs warned him to think about your family. Think about your daughter's career. Her father appeared visibly frightened by Mr. Combs' threats and actions, which in turn made Miss Richard feel terrified for herself and her family's safety. 104. The next night, Diddy Dirty Money performed on SNL. Mr. Combs subsequently called Miss Richard, complimented her performance, and concluded with the threat: "You don't call your dad unless you're in the hospital."
Hold on one sec. Katrina, do you want to jump in?
Go ahead, let you finish a little more. I'll come in about 3 minutes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. Can we comment on this BS or we gotta wait? Because I'm so done. I'm
Woo!
done.
I know. You know what? We might as well continue through it. Then we'll comment. Go ahead, E. And then
Go ahead, E.
Yes, you're doing a good job. Thank you. Go ahead.
Unjust enrichment of defendants by breach of contract and or copyright infringement. 105. As a member of Danity Kane, Miss Richard has performed on over 15 songs and holds composition credits for more than 3 songs. Defendants have failed to account to or pay Miss Richard as agreed for her compositions and her performances, and have breached contracts and infringed her copyrights, all of which has unjustly enriched defendants. As a member of Diddy Dirty Money, Miss Richard has performances recorded on over 9 songs. Additionally, Miss Richard has composition rights and credits on more than 5 songs. Defendants have failed to account to or pay Miss Richard as agreed for her compositions and her performances and breached contracts and or infringed her copyrights, unjustly enriching defendants. 107. In 2020, Mr. Combs selected Miss Richard for a reboot of Making the Band.
2020.
And Miss Richard spent hours preparing to be a judge on the new show. However, the COVID-19 pandemic halted those plans, and Miss Richard was never compensated in any way. 108. On or about July 1st, 2021, Mr. Combs and Bad Boy Records directed Janice Combs Publishing Inc. to assign its administration rights of Miss Richard's songs, and the songs are listed, held from her tenure with defendants in the years of 2005 and 2012, through 2012, to Sony Songs, a division of Sony Music Publishing, LLC. The assignment, signed by Ms. Richard on October 22nd, 2024, purported to credit through a semi-annual accounting Ms. Richard's royalty account for Ms. Richard's composition between 80 to 90% of her publishing share. However, no statements were ever provided, no payments were ever made, no reversions nor assignment were ever recorded with performing rights organizations or other royalty collecting entities by defendants or by Sony. Defendants have wholly failed to account to or pay Ms. Richard as agreed for her compositions and her performances in breach of the assignment and have thereby infringed her copyrights, resulting in defendants being unjustly enriched. 109. During the summer of 2023, Mr. Combs' new record company, Love Records Inc., tendered a contract for negotiation to Ms. Richard for the song entitled Deliver Me, embodied as track 3 on the Love album, Off the Grid, officially released on September 15, 2023. Upon information and belief, Deliver Me sold well prior to Mr. Combs' legal troubles in November 2023. Continuing to the present, Ms. Richard sought to establish her rightful percentage as a 21% composer on Deliver Me. Mr. Combs personally called Ms. Richard and left a voicemail complaining about her fair requests. Upon information and belief, Mr. Combs directed his attorneys to avoid confirming the composition percentages on the song and, in fact, list composers who played no part in composing the song. As a result, the contract was never signed by either Ms. Richard or Love Records Inc. Nevertheless, Ms. Richard obtained a copyright registration certificate on a timely basis, said registration lists authors, claimants as agreed when the song was created in 2009. The registration is filed separately in the court and support Ms. Richard's claim of copyright infringement by defendants herein. Defendants, Love Records, and Mr. Combs infringed Ms. Richard's copyrights in the composition of Deliver Me by releasing Deliver Me without Ms. Richard's permission and without compensation. Damages, 110. As a result of the acts and conduct complained of herein, Ms. Richard has suffered and will continue to suffer the loss of income, wages, benefits, royalties, promotional fees, touring fees, and other compensation. Ms. Richard has also suffered, among other things, future pecuniary losses, emotional pain, suffering, inconvenience, loss of enjoyment of life, post traumatic stress disorder, anxiety disorder, insomnia, panic attacks, and other pecuniary losses, entitling her to an award of compensatory and punitive damages, injunctive and declaratory relief, attorney's fees and costs, and other remedies as this court may deem appropriate. First cause of action: violation of the Victims of Gender Motivated Violence Act, NYC. Okay, here we go. 111. Plaintiff repeats and realleges each and every allegation in all of the preceding paragraphs as it fully set forth herein. 112. The above described conduct of Mr. Combs, including but not limited to Mr. Combs' physical and sexual assaults, harassment, and unlawful imprisonment of plaintiff in New York City, constitutes a crime of violence against plaintiff and is a crime of violence motivated by gender as defined in Code 10-1103 of the New York City BGMBPL. The term crime of violence means an act or series of acts that will constitute a misdemeanor or felony against the person as defined in state or federal law if the conduct presents a serious risk of physical injury to another, whether or not those acts have actually resulted in criminal charges, prosecution, or conviction. And the term crime of violence motivated by gender means a crime of violence committed because of gender or on the basis of gender and due, at least in part, to an animus based on the victim's gender. 113. The above described conduct of Mr. Combs, including but not limited to SA, PA, threats, and false imprisonment. All conduct prescribed by PL 110, and the codes are listed here, constitutes a crime of violence against plaintiff and is a crime of violence motivated by gender as defined in 10-1103. 114. Defendants Harvey Pierre, Interscope Records, and Bad Boy Records have financially and otherwise benefited from these acts and omissions by keeping Mr. Combs, the volatile and explosive owner of Bad Boy Records, satisfied and benefited from facilitating his behavior. 115. Defendants Harvey Pierre, Interscope Records, and Bad Boy Records have enabled, condoned, had knowledge of, and failed to act to prevent or mitigate Mr. Combs' commission of the above mentioned crimes of violence motivated by gender and are therefore also liable under the BGMBPL. As a direct and proximate result of the above mentioned crimes of violence and gender motivated violence, plaintiff has sustained and will continue to sustain monetary damages and or economic harm, physical injury, pain and suffering, and serious psychological and emotional distress, entitling her to an award of compensatory and punitive damages, injunctive and declaratory relief, attorney's fees and costs, and other remedies as this court may deem appropriate, as set forth in 10-1104. Pursuant to 10-1105, this cause of action is timely because it is commenced within 2 years and 6 months after September 1st, 2022. Second cause of action, 118. Plaintiff repeats and realleges each and every allegation in all of the preceding paragraphs as it fully set forth herein. 119. Mr. Combs subjected plaintiff to SB as defined in Cal Penal Code 234.4. In doing so, he intended to and did cause harmful and sexually offensive contact with their person and placed them in imminent apprehension of such contact. 120, pursuant to California Code of Civil Procedure 340.16 as amended by Assembly Bill 2777. This cause of action is timely because it is commenced within 3 years of the date plaintiff discovered the injuries resulting from defendant's acts, which plaintiff did not discover and could not have reasonably discovered until November 2023 when Ms. Ventura filed a lawsuit against defendant. 121, defendant Bad Boy Records has financially and otherwise benefited from these acts and omissions by keeping Mr. Combs, the volatile and explosive owner of Bad Boy Records, satisfied and benefited from facilitating his behavior. 122, as direct and proximate result of defendant's actions, plaintiff has sustained and will continue to sustain monetary damages and or economic harm, physical injury, pain and suffering, and serious psychological and emotional distress. 123. Plaintiff also seeks reasonable attorney's fees as provided under Cal Civil Code 52.5. Third cause of action. Forced labor in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1589 and 1595 against defendant Sean Combs, Bad Boy Records, and UMG Interscope Geffen and A&M. 124. Plaintiff repeats and realleges each and every allegation and all of the preceding paragraphs as if fully set forth herein. 125. Defendants knowingly obtain labor from plaintiff through threats of serious harm, physical restraint, and other means of coercion in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1589. 126. Defendants, Bad Boy Records, UMG Interscope, Geffen, and A&M Records knowingly benefited from the forced labor and the trafficking activities conducted by Mr. Combs. 127. Under 18 U.S.C. 1595, plaintiff is entitled to bring a civil action against all defendants for their violation of 18 U.S.C. 1589. 128. As a direct and proximate result of defendant's actions, plaintiff has sustained and will continue to sustain monetary damages and or economic harm, physical injury, pain and suffering, and serious psychological and emotional distress. 129. Plaintiff seeks compensatory damages for the harm suffered as a result of defendant's forced labor practices. 130. Plaintiff also seeks punitive damages to deter such conduct by defendants in the future, along with reasonable attorney's fees and costs. 131. Defendant's continuous threats and coercion prevented plaintiff from asserting her rights within the statutory prescribed period. Defendant should be stopped from asserting the statute of limitations as a defense due to the duress exerted upon plaintiff. Fourth.
One moment, just one thing. Hey, all of that is repetitive from all the way down. It's going to repeat until you get to what she's asking for.
So let's go jump up to what she's asking for. On what page, Felicia?
I believe it's like page 56.
Okay.
56, 57, something like that.
We'll go there.
Right. They're citing all of the laws. That has been allegedly violated here. But it's repeating to the chat. It's repeating the same language on each one.
Under each action that she's hitting and the people that she's
exactly.
Mm-hmm. And we named all the people that she's suing. Let's go to 56, you said?
Yeah, about right there. You see here? Prayer for 50.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, E.
Prayer for relief on claims. Wherefore, Ms. Richard prays that this court enter judgment against defendants herein and any other defendants who may later be added to this action as follows. 1. For a money judgment representing compensatory damages, including but not limited to consequential damages, lost wages, earning, royalties, publishing, touring, and promotional income, and non-economic damages, and all other sums of money together with interest on these amounts according to proof. 2. For a money judgment for mental pain and anguish and severe emotional distress according to proof. 3, for restitution. 4, for disgorgement of all sums unjustly obtained from plaintiff or inured to the benefit of defendants. 5, for civil penalties. 6, for punitive and exemplary damages according to proof. 7, for attorney's fees and costs. 8, for prejudgment and postjudgment interest. And 9, for such other and further relief as the court may deem just and proper. Jury demand. Ms. Richard demands a trial by jury on all issues trialable upright by jury. Dated September 10th, 2024.
And it's the Bloom firm, Lisa Bloom. And we all know her mother is a powerhouse. Breaking news, J-Lo is in negotiation to buy a house next door to Diddy. I cannot. Oh my God. Ooh, child. She's going to, she jumping from one fire to the next. I wouldn't buy no house next door to him. Felicia, your thoughts?
Thank you, Diva. Thank you, everybody. And E, you did such a great job. Kept me totally engaged. I appreciate it. It seems to me that she was complicit in her kidnapping, complicit in her verbal and physical abuse, complicit in working for free, complicit in being in an environment that she said was hostile and demeaning and disrespectful. So I was hoping at some point, while Eve was reading her complaint, that she was going to tell us when the turning point was. I thought the turning point was going to be when she was allegedly kidnapped in this vehicle. And I don't know how she got to call her father or relate to her father. I don't know how that come to be. And if I remember correctly, she said she was on West 25th Street in Manhattan. And then 2 hours later, her father showed up from Baltimore. Now, I don't know if he flew. I don't know if he ran. I don't know, maybe her father's Superman. I don't know. But traditionally, that's a much longer drive than 2 hours. And as someone put in the chat, her father didn't call the police. She didn't contact the police. And then we find she was given a phone call some years later to come back and rebirth the group or whatever. And she said yes. So I don't get where her break point came. I don't. And so because I didn't, I think this is going to be one of those little rod matters where, again, people are working for free. But if I heard correctly, maybe even I read that part, she never had an agreement, right? There was nothing in writing.
The only thing that's saving her is that she did copyright her one song. But my thing is, you went back after you endured all of that stuff previously and he didn't pay you. You thought you were going to come do a song on the Love album and he was going to pay you?
I don't. Okay, so when we did the Little Rod case, he would say that Mr. Combs would promise to buy him a mansion. We're going to get this Grammy. We're going to do this. I didn't hear any of that from her, that he would say to her, I'll pay you next month when, you sell XYZ. She did mention, though, at the end of some performances, they were given some $5,000 haphazardly or something like that. I don't understand why she's doing this at this time. I'm not saying I don't believe her.
Right.
I do believe her.
Absolutely.
I just don't understand what.
You know what I don't understand either, Felicia and Julie, so I'm about to come to you. What I don't understand is all of them want to throw in this ST information, right? Mm-hmm. It's randomly thrown in there. So you watched this man allegedly bring in underage girls and boys. You watched things happen to them, and then you still stayed. And then when you did get out, in 2023, you come back, or 2022, 2023, you come back to do the Love album with somebody that you observed did all of that. You got to make that make sense to me. And then you participated. He let you get away with participating in none of it. You went and locked yourself in the room, and he locked you in the room, and you put the furniture against the door, and you never had to participate or engage in any of those acts. It doesn't make sense to me. Julius, your thoughts?
Aubrey O'Day was the starting point.
Mm-hmm.
Shannon Bach came next. Then Andrea. And I said something else is coming in a more detailed way. And then we see this. I did not realize how much he put Dawn through the ringer. He put her through the ringer. And I believe her. I do hope at the time, yes, she was defending Diddy. Absolutely. But I think therapy here has been causing her to bring this up into writing. And I say that because we know what we go through and what people do to us. But sometimes we do not want to admit it. She had to admit what she has seen. She had to admit, by what it sounds like, by force, her complacency in some of this. But we know Diddy is a crook. And I will say this, like I've been saying, his time is coming. His time is coming. Because with the Fed involved, the Fed don't play. And so, to any more of his victims, please come forward. And also to the late Kim Porter, may you rest in peace. And I hope that we are able to hear your story in your words by your book.
So if y'all remember when these stories first came out, I said here, people bash me upside the head, but I said the reason why many people aren't talking because they participated in the shenanigans. So what Diddy did was he made sure when things happened, there were several people around and several people engaging. You notice she said there was a lot of celebrities, there was bodyguards, and she named the police. The reason why she really named the police is to help with her case. This is self-centered, right? To help with her case, to help create the atmosphere as to why she was very afraid to speak up, because he hired police and police were also involved. She mentioned celebrities being at these parties. It's funny that she wanted to mention Usher was at that dinner table. I forgot who else she mentioned was at the dinner table, and also Cassie get punched in the stomach, allegedly, right? But listen, if you think of 3 of your friends that you perhaps hang out with all the time, or even 2, or even 1, you've probably seen a whole lot. So she said the bodyguards were there. But you got a lot of the bodyguards 10 toes down on what they did not see. But she's telling us that what appeared to be underage, you see they playing games with what they saw, because they want to tell their story and they want us to feel sorry for their part of the story. And then they want to allude to, they look like they was underage. Don't play games with it. Don't play games with it. If you're going to tell it, tell the truth, shame the devil, and then we can understand and say, listen, I was seeing all of this and I was traumatized while I was seeing it. I saw what appeared to be underage girls and boys. It was a lot of drugs. He was always high. He was always in his underwear. And again, it's not that, her story is very believable because everybody talks about how this man pretty much liked to walk around with probably nothing on or just in his undergarments. So the thing that struck me also, and I'm coming to you, Katrina, is when she talked about how she was so dehydrated, went to the hospital, and then she came back and he made her work the next day. I'm not super nurse. I don't know everything about nursing, but I know this. If she went to the hospital as dehydrated and her blood work and all of that being as off as it was, and she didn't even have to spend a night in the hospital, that's shocking to me. From what she said, they didn't eat for days. Days. Which I feel like the way she was telling it turned into weeks. They was up for 20 and 30 and 48 hours in a row. I feel like that if they would tell their story is sensational enough. But I feel like in telling these stories, sometimes they put a little extra oomph on it. And that oomph is what's going to cause them to have the other lawyer debunk their story. A thing that I think that's going to debunk the story, and I ain't go to law school and I'm catching this. You was willing to help Cassie. You had the strength to help Cassie, tell her to get out of it. Then she had that other one where he took the passport and they left her in Scotland. She had the strength to tell that girl and help that girl try to get out of her marriage. But she had no strength and no wherewithal to help herself. Ever. To the point where even as late as 2023, she went back to Diddy to do the Love album. Then she claimed it wasn't until Cassie came out with her story that she realized that she was traumatized, done dirty, beat up and wrong. But yet throughout her thing, she said they went to him for money. Listen, I want to beat some of these lawyers. I really do. Because as a lawyer, you need to hear the story, hear all of their truth, and then you tell them, this is how I'm going to write it up so we can win your money. Because she has a legit case with just the money piece of it. With just the money piece of it and the details that she had. We went and did Diego. We did tours. We did this. We did that. We got nothing. I did Danity Kane. I did Making the Band. Look, we got nothing. Every now and then he would throw us a bone. With that alone, she's owed a whole lot of compensation. But y'all throwing 20 and 10 on there, and you're going to have some holes in your case. Now, let me just play this little clip real quick. Is this where I want to just show it? I think so. Hold on one second.
And so I've given a lot of thought, and I'm going to let you out your contract too. As far as for you, Dawn, I still want to make music with you. I still want you to be signed to the label. And, if I decide to put that together, Danity Kane, then, you'll be the only member that'll still be there.
Katrina, your thoughts?
Girl, he played you like lotto. Well, he let you play lotto, but you didn't win. That, like you said, Diva, you ain't no super nurse, and I'm not a super nurse. But if you that dehydrated without food or anything like that, and the hospital sent you home, maybe they gave her 2 bags of IV fluids. But then you saying y'all staying up for weeks at a time. How many hours at a time? If you don't get sleep, you go crazy. So y'all wasn't crazy in the booth? Because you would go delirious if you're not sleeping. And then you say you're not eating. Y'all not fainting? Y'all ain't passing out? How you got the energy to stand up there to sing if y'all don't have no kind of food or anything like that to coming through? I'm not saying she lying. I'm just saying in general. And then you, like you said, you helping other people get away, but you're not getting away. And the thing of it is, if that was my father and I called him and he didn't help me, he couldn't be my father no more. Because why would you let me go through all this torment and going through all this abuse and you didn't do anything to help me? But then again, she didn't do anything to help herself. Because if you locked up in that car for 2 hours in the cold and when you get out, you still want to work with this man? I remember Kalina said she only had $50,000 when she left Diddy. She only had $50,000 in her bank account when she went on Love and Hip Hop. So y'all did all this work for $50,000. Mind you, you know Diddy do not pay his artists. So I don't understand why people flock to him. Yeah, I understand y'all want to be in the business and stuff, so and so and so and so. But every artist told you that they didn't get paid. So why in the world would y'all want to even go work with this man knowing that he don't pay people? And then he has it set up that everything is in his mom's name. And so that's probably why the FBI went to her, probably why she was at the hospital, because she probably got to realize she got to go back to a one-bedroom apartment or something, because they probably finna take all that from them. And the fact of the matter is, she's living off of other people's hard work, which she knows what her son has done. She knows this.
You talking about Mama Combs? Katrina, did we lose
You hear me?
Yeah, we lost you for a minute.
Oh, hold on.
I hear you now.
Diva, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. So they know he don't pay. So why would you even flock to this man? Your mom knew exactly what you was doing. Y'all living high on the horse. These artists ain't making no money. Out there struggling. She saw, well, don't know if she see how Black Rob looked, but she seen how Black Rob looked. Craig Mack, Mace, 112, total. All these people got no resolution, and you went to go work with this man. You seen what this man doing to these other girls. Yes, I can see that you was traumatized, but you obviously you telling on yourself as well, because you sit up there saying that you seen him SA and these young girls, underage girls, giving them the D, and you watching this. So you accessory as well, unless you take a plea or whatever you plan on doing. But you watching this, you in the room with this, so you're an accessory as well. So I don't know why that lawyer even allowed them to put that in there, because you are incriminating yourself. Unless you get immunity or whatsoever, but you just sold on yourself. And I'm not saying that none of this stuff didn't happen. We already know how Diddy get down. But what I'm saying is, you watch this happen. You telling people you saw this happen. So you incriminating yourself. You setting yourself up. You trying to get money, but you setting yourself up to go to jail as well, because you watched this go down. You watch these people, underage people, been given the D. You watch the underage people getting SA, and you didn't say anything. That's what I'm saying. All these people should have came out and said something. Because I remember one of Diddy partners or producers saying that Diddy was finna put some stuff in those girls' drinks to mess them up. I can't remember which person said that, but he said that he was going to give them something and he was going to pimp them out. I remember him saying that to somebody. I'm trying to think what producer or what who the guy was. But either way, if she want the monetary thing, I understand that. Go for that. Everybody, like you said, everybody adding a little sauce. Everybody throwing in a little sauce. But really and truly, you messing up yourself, because you saying things that you can get incriminated by saying you watched all these things happen. And I'm not saying that she don't deserve to get paid or anything like that, But like you said, your lawyer need to tell you how to word your words, because basically you messing yourself up as well. That's all I got, Diva.
I appreciate you. E.
My apologies. So here are my thoughts. In my opinion,
Hold on 1 second. This case is legit. I got the documents from the Southern District of New York court records. It's legit. This thing is 100% legit. It came off. I got mine right off of the court records. From the Southern District of New York. So it's legit. She's serious. Her lawyer is legit. But they're putting 2110. Go ahead, E.
So, in my opinion, the break point came before. I don't want to say break point. I feel like this was already in the works, but I feel like this was brewing around the same time Cassie filed her suit, or right before, I should say. Remember, before Cassie filed her suit, Sean and his team made this huge announcement that all the media outlets reported on, and I think we even touched on it here. Sean gave all of his artists their publishing back. And I believe it was rumored, or it was stated somewhere, that it came with an NDA agreement.
Mhm.
And he knew that the Cassie lawsuit was brewing, because this was also around the same time that he shouted her out at the BET. So there were some demands which had been sent prior. Now, the public, we didn't know that Cassie's lawsuit was coming, but he knew.
Mhm.
And the way that he explained the returning of the publishing to the artist was he just wanted to give it back as a quote unquote thank you for the writers who helped him get to where he is. I believe it was said he just wanted to do something nice. And so when we were going through the document, it said the important date I pulled out was July 1st, 2021. Defendants Janice Combs Publishing, Inc. Granted exclusive administrative rights in plaintiff's composition to Sony songs. And the plaintiff signed her assent to the assignment on October 22nd of 2021. And the assignment provided that plaintiff would receive 90% of publisher's share of performance income and 80% of synchronization income and 90% of all other income. So Dawn was supposed to be getting some residuals. And what Dawn said after that was she never received it. She never received the payment that she was supposed to receive, even after she sent several demands. And I believe she said in response to that was she received threats from Sean. So where I'm going with that is that part Sean is on the hook for. I don't think it's any way around that, especially if it's in writing. But next, the thing with her being locked in the limo, now that happened in 2010. I can believe a variation of that sequence occurred. I can believe that.
Mhm.
But the way that Sean spoke to those girls on Making the Band, it was demeaning. I thought so when I watched it. He was aggressive. He was intimidating. I can see how girls would be intimidated by this producer who seems to be on top of the world. I can believe that she felt inferior. I can believe that. However, I do have one thing that is troubling me, and where I take exception is she mentioned the touching of the body parts, and she mentioned the modeling. She never mentioned that they had any type of sexual interactions. But the modeling piece about the touching of the body and where the bra should go and where they wanted the pants to stop, that part I take exception with. This is something I know a little bit about. I'm no Naomi Campbell, but I've been backstage. I've been fitted. I understand there's some touching that goes on. I understand that sometimes, it comes with the territory, and it's not uncommon for people to touch you or see you in the nude and point at certain parts of your body, especially during, fittings and stylings. And when it comes to tailoring and making adjustments, I can also understand that it can be uncomfortable. And the smacking of the booty and the complimenting, well, even gay men do that, and other women who you have that rapport with backstage, sometimes that happens. It's sort of like a high five. And when she says that she told him not to touch her every time that he did it, I don't believe that. And the reason I don't believe that is because that she said that she was so afraid to disagree to a certain point. She was afraid to speak up, and she's painting this picture that she was fearful, and this is why she complied and stayed so long, and she went along to get along. But if you're saying that you told him not to touch you, and you said it repeatedly, don't touch me, because I believe that was in quotes. In every other case we've heard prior, when you deny Diddy's advances, he becomes physically violent with you and become more assertive. And the fact that that pattern didn't occur, and the fact that there is no type of sexual chemistry by what she has listed, I don't believe that she said don't touch me each and every time for the last 20 years. I don't believe that. But anyway, you went through all of this in 2010, but you were still willing to come back
Come on
in
now.
2020 and work on this Making the Band reboot. And that's the part I take the biggest exception with. I understand the royalty. She's entitled to that. But the returning to work with him after the kidnapping and the assault, because this also happened after she said they were wherever they were, and he attempted to strike her, and the bodyguard removed her. But you were willing to 10 years later come back and say, okay, I will do this. And the only reason this did not come to pass was due to the COVID-19 pandemic. That part is I don't like it. And in my opinion, because as someone who has worked in HR, I understand 10 years is a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that you were willing to return and put yourself back into this same condition where you could not sleep for days, you could not eat for days,
You didn't get paid. You didn't get paid.
Yes, and you were not paid properly. The fact that you were willing to enter into a new contract and start the whole thing all over again after being free for 10 years, to me that implies forgiveness or some type of meeting of the minds. And the only reason I think she still may be able to get away with this is because she is asking for a jury trial. And Diddy is public enemy number one, and it's nowhere in America where I think that they will be able to find people to put on a jury who has not seen the Cassie tape, who has not seen the raid by Homeland Security, and want to hang him out to dry. And so the including of the incident she saw with Cassie and her being willing to testify to that is going to be a strategic way of playing on the strings of the jury to maximizing her judgment. And I think she can win, but I do feel like I take exceptions with those last parts.
Yeah, I think she has an uphill battle like Little Rodney. I think like Little Rodney, if Little Rodney would have stuck to what you owe me, I think the win would have been a little easier. I think her uphill battle is you, in your own words, said you was ready to say Diva, Felicia, Julius, Katrina, but you was too afraid to save yourself. It just doesn't make any sense.
Diva, if I may,
Yeah.
save herself from what? I'm missing a big piece here. You know, as I said before, with Little Rod, there was promises of a piece of property, a Grammy. There was no reciprocity in her complaint that she was promised eventually, you're going to get this. We just hear she's not eating, she's not sleeping, she ain't getting paid, and she's watching crimes being committed. I'm wondering, because when I'm listening to E, I'm wondering if she is setting herself up to be a witness for somebody else and be compensated that way. Because I'm not hearing where her complaint has roots and has foundation. Everything sounds voluntary to me. Everything sounds complicit. And of all of the suits that we have read on this panel together, this is the first one where the plaintiff doesn't even admit to having an alcoholic drink. She's never did the dope. She didn't do the drinking. She didn't do the exploitation. None of that.
You want to know what the problem is too, though? Her member that got fired, Danity Kane, said that she was the only one that didn't agree to do the things that Diddy wanted to be done, and that's why she got fired.
Correct. But you ran that clip where Mr. Combs says, and the only one that's going to stay is
Dawn.
Yeah. And you'll be the only original member left. No, this, and they must have taken this case pro bono because she doesn't have any money. She has nothing. She has nothing. I believe her complaint is nothing. This must be to have some credibility for somebody else's complaint. Because even when, and I don't know if anybody else on the panel took issue with it or in the chat, but even when E was reading the prayer for, all of those numbers that we read in the beginning were not in the close. There was no number that said she's seeking $1.8 million for loss of wages.
Oh, shoot. You speaking facts. You speaking
nothing. But I think in the beginning, at least when I was reading, there were numbers. No. You know, a couple of people in chat said, well, I'm giving her the side eye. I'm not giving her anything but an L for a loss, and you're not playing me, and you're not playing in my face, okay? And I believe whoever called your father, I don't even know. Please, no.
She said she used Kalina's phone to call her dad. And that's what I was saying. Like, if your dad came down and he didn't do nothing to help you or anything like that, and you
no, Katrina.
You saw that you was stuff like that.
She said her father showed up and they walked him through a series of rooms, and he stayed until they released her. This was the kidnapping part, until they released her. Now, we know, we all, if we can remember back, there was like 3 months ago, there was some other artist that the girlfriend showed up, but before the police came, because remember, the guy called the police on her. She said the guy kicked her and beat her up and everything. When the police showed up, she ain't saying nothing to nobody. And when she got home, she called her father, and he didn't go do anything either.
Are you talking about Neo?
Yes, that's who it was. Remember that story?
Yeah.
She said he beat her down, blah, blah, blah. And then he called the police on her. And when the police came, she made no mention of what he had done. She just left.
And that's why I think she's trying to, when she said she want a jury trial, I think she's saying that because she know that everybody knows the Diddy story, and maybe he gonna settle with her before she even go to court. Do you see what I'm saying? Because she want a jury trial, and everybody know about Diddy. So I'm thinking she asking for a jury trial to try to get him to settle some money out of court. Because like you said, the stuff that she's saying, I'm not saying it didn't happen to her, but the stuff that she's saying ain't making no sense. You stayed around after all this stuff happened. You watched all this stuff happen. And then you decide to come back after knowing that he didn't pay you the first time, after seeing that he was touching you and doing this, but you still want to come back.
Stole
Girl,
all your
make sense. I'm not saying that the stuff didn't happen to her. She was paid. But I'm just saying, I don't get it. You lawyer up and then you say you want a jury trial. And like he said, everybody know what Diddy is the hot topic now. So if you asking for a jury trial, everybody know what Diddy done did. So she was doing that to get it settled out of court.
Well,
She want him to make a settlement before she go to court. That's what she's pushing for. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I see.
no, I agree, but I do want to say one thing. It did say when they were in the limo because you couldn't open the door from the inside. And so they were stuck. And the only reason that the father was called, she said that she called the father from Kalina's phone, like Katrina said. However, if your father was your knight in shining armor all along, then why did you not call him prior to? And the other thing, the bodyguard came and got Kalina out of the car and then left Dawn in the car alone. And she said the car was off. It was in the dead of winter. She did not have a coat. And when the father, like Felicia said, negotiated, or him and Diddy had some type of talk, and then they finally let the girl out the car. But you know, I've been in Maryland. I guess you can get to New York in 2 hours. I can't remember. The train moves pretty fast, but she said he was driving. But it's unusual, especially after all of this, that you be willing to go back and work with him 10 years later and do the whole thing all over again. So it's unusual.
She got a lot going on in this. And so you don't name the bodyguard because he the one picked you up and put you in that car. The bodyguard put two of the girls, both of them in the car together. They later came and released one of them, left you in there. You don't name him because she named everybody else. Janice Combs Holden, this one, that one, Bad Boy Records, Indisco, The bodyguard doesn't get named. He lift you up and stuck you in this car and you couldn't get out. You don't put the bodyguard on this lawsuit?
And I'm thinking she was saying the bodyguard was coming to get her so Diddy wouldn't punch her and, taking her to safety. But obviously it was something different because she said she braced herself because she thought he was finna hit her with his fist. But
No,
next thing she
was going to hit her with the fist. I thought initially when she said the bodyguard came and put him in the car, the bodyguard, because the Diddy fist never hit her because the bodyguard.
that's what I'm saying. She said that she was bracing for Diddy to hit her with his fist, but the bodyguard snatched her up first and put her in the car. So I was thinking like the bodyguard was trying to protect her from getting hit. But obviously he kidnapped her, whatever. I guess she was being kidnapped because she said that she was bracing her body up because she thought Diddy was finna punch her.
I know that, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, Katrina. The bodyguard need to be named.
There you go. There you go.
Because at least when he came back and opened the door, he let one of y'all out and not both.
Well, it's not only name him. He needs to be included in the suit because you can't say that Sean orchestrated your kidnapping because she never says that Sean told the bodyguard to put her in the car.
Talk, E.
It's the bodyguard.
You better talk.
So I was thinking like when she said the bodyguard snatched her up, I was thinking like the bodyguard was finna help her, but obviously not. So the bodyguard need to be, like you said, brought in the case too. What's his name? Because you falsely kidnapped me. You falsely held me hostage. So you need to be named as well. So I get what you're saying. We saying the same thing because he's getting ready to punch you. The bodyguard got you, grabbed you, and put you in the car. So I was thinking the bodyguard was trying to save her, but obviously the bodyguard was a part of the shenanigans as well. So yes, he do need to be named because you was a false imprisonment. So yes, he need to be named as well.
Now I will say this. Roger Bonds claimed he worked for Diddy for how many years or whatever the case may be. So this is a mess. But see, everybody that was around Diddy that saw all of this going on, they want to act 100% innocent. They saw all of this intercourse going on, because this is YouTube. They saw all of this going on. They never engaged. They never touched anything. They never did none of that. Now, it was also alleged that Diddy loved to just sneak stuff in the drinks. They never got by accident, a drink that had nothing slipped in it. At these parties, they never got a meal. She didn't get no sleep. She wasn't eating, but she was always in her right state of mind because she acknowledged that people were bust in, they was underage, and she saw all kinds of stuff going on. All of this on little to no food. She claimed she vomited too, right? But she wasn't eating nothing. If anything, I bet she would have dry heaved. But I ain't going to get on her like that. All I'm saying is that when you decide that you're going to tell a story and when you want to put 20 on 10 and it has to do with the law, it's going to come back to bite you. Because a half good lawyer will eat that situation alive. The first thing I would say is, I'm glad you tried to say Cassie, Betty, Regina, Angie, but you never decided out of all of that stuff, you was bold enough to go say them, but you wasn't willing to save yourself. All right, I'm going to let all of that go. You came back to him in 2022 to do the Love album. He didn't pay you. You got no royalties. He stole your music. He violated you. He calls you up in 2022 and you like, yeah, I'll come. Then he did it the same thing again. He stole your record again. Where did they do this at? Wayne, what are your thoughts?
You know, as I was listening earlier, my thing, regardless of how these women got there, whatever they did or didn't do, this man is the monster. He's the lowest piece of SHIT I've seen. And it was a trick. All I could think of 100 ways I could help him meet his demise. All I could think is how we can take this man off the face of the earth. The way he treated people. He treated them like dogs. Dogs get treated better than that. Leave some food. If all this, I'm based on what was said in this, working 24, 48 hours. I'm surprised somebody didn't get the balls to bring a weapon in there and put it to the front of his head and pull it. And it wouldn't be no more Diddy. I'm so sick and tired of this piece of still walking the face of the earth. And these people who do these horrible crimes and abuse people, and because they have money, they got good lawyers. And regardless how bad the thing they get off. So I'm not concerned about how these people got there, what they did, what they owed, or whatever. Nobody deserves to be treated like that. And if I hear tomorrow that somebody has helped him meet his demise.
Relax with the words, Wayne. We're on YouTube. But I hear what you're saying, right? And everybody's so ready. And I'm thinking, I'm going to let you finish though, Wayne. I'm thinking, yes, he is a monster. But see, these monsters cannot continue and live this long if they don't have enablers. And their enablers need to go down with them because they're just as guilty. She said there was a dinner with celebrities and executives there, and he cold punched Cassie in her stomach. That's what she said. So it's not just him. You had several people that sat at that table, like she said, y'all saw what this man did, and y'all still gave him a $50 million contract. There were people at that party, she said celebrities, which we already know. I told you on that first lawsuit. The reason why none of these celebrities are speaking, because they was there participating. She said celebrities was there having relations with these said girls and boys also. She said the bodyguards saw it all. So yes, I don't disagree. Diddy's a monster, but you got a whole bunch of mini monsters that need to go down with him too. And that is why this man has remained from behind bars for so long, because they're trying to figure out how to do this thing. And I called this from the beginning. I told you this. She said he hired police officers that was there. How do I take this man down? And I got law enforcement and everybody else who was there allegedly participating and doing all of this too. So everybody's saying he's a monster, he's a monster, he's a monster. Well, it's going to be shocking if they really all come out and tell the truth. How many monsters that we still listening to their music and saying it's okay? He's not the only one. The bodyguards now are out and about talking about, oh, I saved Cassie. Oh, he didn't hit nobody from me. It's the lies. This girl right here is saying that the bodyguards participated. So which one is it? The bodyguards was just helping save lives, or the bodyguards was participating? The bodyguard picked her up in the other girl and threw her in the car where somebody took the handles off. So it's something they did on a regular basis. She said she couldn't get out the car because there were no handles. So that's what they do. So that means the people that drove his car knew about this, the chauffeurs, all of that. Everybody needs to go down. Just like all of those people that helped R. Kelly, everybody like, yay, 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 R. Kelly's behind bars. Well, still the many little monsters that helped them are still in these streets, destroying somebody's brother, sister, uncle, cousin, something. When you want to take this operation down, in my opinion, we got to get everybody. Finish your thought, Wayne.
I agree. Let it be a domino effect. But right now it's Diddy.
Right now is
Diddy. And if this uncovers the rest of them, so be it. Let it be a domino effect with Diddy, and then whoever else, if they want to go after all the rest of them. But right now it's him. It might be Jay-Z, it might be somebody else, but they ain't talking about it right now. So he's in the news. They got the evidence. People filing lawsuits. So get him.
I hear you, Wayne, but I'm telling you, the reason why they're not going to get him is because of situations as such. You're writing this thing up, and if you really want to get him, you got to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, shame the devil, and name all the names. You can't come half-stepping with your story, and then we're sitting there. You know why? When you come half-stepping with your story, he got 3 law firms. If he got a decent lawyer in any one of them law firms, they can rip this thing to shreds.
Didn't he tell him, I know how to make people disappear, things disappear? When he was talking to them girls, he said, y'all itches and O's and blah, 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 blah. And I know how to make stuff disappear or whatever.
Uh-huh.
That's kind of scary, especially if you've seen it happen.
Wayne, may I please say I appreciate and love your passion. I really do. I want the criminal charges to come. This is a civil complaint.
Come on now.
This ain't nothing criminal. She said she was kidnapped, taken against her will. Can we get a police report?
Come on now.
Can I get a little bit of video? I don't know. Listen, because I'm all about taking this off the street. But you gotta have the courage.
Come on.
And the integrity.
Come on.
And the truth
Hello.
to do it. Now, yes, what she said in her complaint, we have heard or read in 6 other complaints. She gave us nothing new. We all believe it. I don't think there's anybody in that chat or anybody in this panel don't believe that's how he talked, because that's how he been talking. But what I want to know from her, where is the line? When did it go from I am complicit to now I am being a victim? I didn't hear it. They read the complaint. I listened. Okay. And I also find it very interesting that she says she worked on the Love album, that she was up for 36, 72 hours. She ain't eating. She's staying, like Diva said, and we read it, boarding up rooms. But Little Rod didn't mention her one time in his complaint. And he said he was there for a year. So all of this disconnect. I don't like to see people go into the penitentiary system and we're not 100% sure you need to be there. So yes, we want all the trash off the street, but we want the folks to come forward and bring the facts. Because personally, I don't give a damn about your feelings. That's how you felt in 2010, and then you went away for a little while, and you came back in 2020 because you was feeling a little different. No, I want the facts, and the facts is going to bring the truth. So no, I didn't see anything here. If you said I will work for free, like the chef, like the nanny, you were supposed to have an agreement. Little Rod don't have no agreement, and you supposed to be up there too. Everybody working on the Love album for free. Well, of course he had all of this money and all these bad things to say. Who up here on this panel or going out in this chat tomorrow to go work for somebody saying, yes, I'm going to work for free? No, they work for free, but they don't do the deed. They don't do the assault. They don't do the drinking. They ain't up there with the artist. Oh, no, they're just on the sidelines being afraid.
And wait, being a superhero, Felicia.
Yeah, and she's the first superhero. She's the first superhero.
Yeah, being a superhero.
As I'm speaking about this out loud, and this is just a thought that has come to my mind. Was Cassie Ventura, was there some hidden agreement that if she put together a lawsuit, she was going to compensate all these other people who are coming through now? And maybe she ain't come through with no money, and now they got an issue. Is this what this is about? Because this complaint here is not it. No. If you chose to work for free for, 15 years, that's what you chose to do. And she said she went back and she still had no agreement.
Like you said, Felicia, we all believe because we know the lawsuits, if we were to take away names off the lawsuit and mix it all up in one pot, they all have similarities to it, right? And again, you telling us what you saw with your eyes happen to Cassie, what you saw with your eyes that happened to Kim Porter. But again, we already know that. Why didn't you stick to your lawsuit? Because you never said in her lawsuit, she said the one time where he went to punch her, but it didn't land on her. You never said on your lawsuit he was beating you down, punching you down. This is your lawsuit. We need to know about you. And at the end of the day, you need to say, I want my royalties. I want my money. I want this. I want that.
But she didn't. She's a witness.
This is just my opinion on this situation. She got an uphill battle. She sunk herself in some areas where she thought she was making this thing more sensationalized. She stuck her foot in her own mouth. In this lawsuit, she went to save about 3 people, but didn't never save herself.
You know what? And very directly and very frankly, when you went to Harvey Weinstein's lawyer, you should have known you was in trouble.
Oh, good God.
It's true. Lisa Bloom went to represent Harvey Weinstein.
She did.
Yep.
She did. She did. And it seems like even the lawyers now, they just want celebrity status. Tyrone Blackburn. It's like, do what you study to do. Do law. Do law. If Little Ronnie would have came to me in this dawn and I was a lawyer, I would have been like, listen, we're going to stick to getting your money for what you were not compensated for when you worked for him. Because we're going to have to figure out how do we strategically let these people know why you went back in 2022 to do the Love album.
Mm-hmm. For free.
Okay. Again.
For free.
Again. Because in the past, you got a whole track record of this man not paying you. You come back in 2022, and I think she said, did she mention anything in there about therapy? I know she mentioned trauma, depression. Did she ever go to therapy?
I don't know. I don't think she had money for therapy. This is a person with no health benefits, no home, no income.
Listen, y'all, there's been a lot.
Yes, it has.
We broke it down. These are just our opinions. And let me be extremely clear. I believe her. But let me be extremely clear. There's things she's unweaving from the story. This man didn't let her get away with nothing else, but when he had his FO parties in front of his eyes, she removed herself and he allowed her to remove herself. Everybody got fired for whatever reason. He kept her. Her ex-bandmate said she left because she wasn't going to do the shenanigans, which alluded to the people she left behind was down with the shenanigans. It's an uphill battle, people. Listen, we're in overtime, way overtime. I appreciate y'all for being here. You know the routine. If you didn't hit the like button on the way in, hit the like button on the way out. You got to buckle your seatbelt when we break down these lawsuits over here, because we take the emotions out of it. Because when you go before that judge and you go before a jury and you have lawyers, your lawyer matters. That's number one. Your lawyer matters. And you know that in just normal everyday cases, they shred to pieces the person that is bringing their lawsuit before the court. And we already know this man is not going down without a fight. We're going to see how this plays out. Is he a monster? Absolutely. Is he the only monster in the world? Absolutely not. But if you're going to bring a lawsuit against Sean Diddy Combs, make sure you come with the truth and nothing but the truth. I told you before, his celebrity friends are not speaking out. They're not saying anything. They're being careful when somebody put the microphone in front of their face and ask about Diddy. Why? Because a lot of them was at those parties. Why? Because I don't see sexual human beings being able to sit there and watch all of this stuff go down and they never engage. That's it, y'all. Good night. Goodbye, everybody. I'll see you next time.